So we know that the four main macroeconomic objectives are low and stable inflation,
Mhm.
economic growth, low unemployment, and a balance of payments on the current account. So when exports and imports are basically equal.
Mhm.
Um, in our essays, we do a lot of diagrams, but the macro diagrams are easy, so it's all about how you explain them. For example, you have a right shift in AD, and you have Y1 going to Y2 and P1 going to P2. And you have like this one where you have Y1 going down to Y2 and P1 going down to P2 and so on.
Mhm.
And this diagram's not fully with AD, but the same with SRAS shifting. So I wanted to help you explain how to actually write about those things in a bit more detail.
Okay.
So for example, if we say something like the diagram shows. If we ever talk about inflation, like the diagram shows an increase in price level, for example, here from P1 to P2, how do we actually expand on that? So, before I tell you, why do you think, like, how can we just expand a bit on inflation? How is that a bad thing when inflation is very high?
It can cause the cost of living crisis.
Yeah. And what does that mean? And or why is that bad?
People have to like cut down on spending and they'll have like less disposable income
Why did they have to
because,
cut down on spending?
sorry,
Yeah, that's correct. Good. Why did they have to cut down on spending exactly?
well, because everything costs more, so they should start like saving more instead of spending things on like, things that
Um,
they don't need.
why does disposable income fall?
Because if prices rise, like wages will probably not like go up with them, they'll probably stay the same.
Yeah, that's the key. So making sure you say that is very useful and very important. So, because wages do not increase in line with prices, disposable incomes will fall because prices have risen. This means that consumers have worse living standards. So that's the reason why inflation is bad. We can expand on it even further as well if we want to, depends on the question. We can explain how workers may ask for a pay rise,
Mhm.
and this could either lead to firms' cost of production rising, and then that could lead to further increase in prices, or it could lead to firms laying off workers. So we can understand all of this, and then depending on the question, we can decide where to stop. But generally, if you talk about inflation, everyone's going to say that inflation happens, but to be able to describe why it's bad is really useful. And going into even further detail, depending on the question as well, can be useful.
Okay.
Okay. Do you remember why deflation is bad?
Um, well, it can cause a fall in demand
So first of all, oh yeah, why?
because prices are like going down, so people like wait for them to like decrease even more,
Good.
so they delay spending.
So this encourages people to de um this is bad because it encourages people to delay spending as they have expectations to expect prices to be lower in the future. Um, how can we continue the chain further from here? Actually, you mentioned already this could lead to This leads to a fall in consumer spending. Can we expand further from that?
Um, well,
What?
firms will receive less
Yeah,
revenue.
yeah.
Um, I don't know, people start saving more.
Um, we can. What would firms do if there's less consumer spending?
Um, well, just lower prices.
Sorry.
Lower prices.
Yeah. So further deflation. Actually, that's quite smart. Good. What else?
Um, you know,
So first of all, business confidence may fall.
mm,
But there may also be in business spending. Um, and we can refer to the aggregate demand equation as well. So aggregate demand will fall initially because of a fall in consumer spending and fall further because of a fall in business spending, investment.
mhm,
Firms may also lay off workers as they as there is no derived demand for them. So if there's reduced demand for goods and services because people are delaying their spending, then there's also less demand for workers. So firms may lay off some workers. AD will fall initially because of a fall in consumer spending, fall further because of a fall in investment, and could also fall even further when people who lose their jobs stop spending as well.
okay.
What's this effect known as? This effect here?
Um, is it negative multiplier?
Yep, well done. Very good. So AD falls and falls and falls. If this continues for 6 months, then it would be called a recession
Okay.
for 2 quarters if there's negative economic growth. Perfect. So that's like a full chain of why inflation is bad and why deflation is bad. Okay. Last one. So we talked about the changes in the price level. The only other thing that we may need to talk about is if there's a change from Y1 to Y2. Less so about this because that's a good thing, but we can go into a lot of depth about why this situation might be bad when there's a fall
Mhm.
in your GDP from Y1 to Y2. So in some situations, we may have to be like, the diagram shows fall in real GDP from Y1 to Y2. So how can we expand on that?
Um,
Why would it be bad for us to go from Y1 to Y2 on this diagram?
um, well, because it's not well, there's like less like it's not gonna lead to economic growth. It's like kind of doing the opposite.
Yeah, good. But why do we care about economic growth at all in the first place? Why would it be so bad for there to be negative economic growth? So
Well,
what is real GDP defined as?
um, well, just like how like sort of how much people spend. Like,
Yeah. So it's the total value of goods and services
yeah,
produced in the economy, right?
Mhm.
So there's a fall in the total value. So whatever the question was talking about has led to this. Again, why is that bad? How can we expand further? It's not that don't overcomplicate it. It's something quite simple if I tell you. Why would it be bad for us to have to produce less and less goods and services?
Mm, well, I mean, we won't have enough things for us.
We want what?
Like, like there's not enough like products and like goods and services.
What will firms do if they don't have enough stuff that they need to make?
Um, import,
Sorry?
import.
Mm, no. Um, if businesses don't need to do anything, what will happen?
Right.
Like if like all the shops are empty, what would be the first thing that a business might do?
Um,
They will probably lay off their workers, right?
right. Yeah.
So that's the main thing. And then that will lead to
Oh,
unemployment. Okay.
okay.
So businesses will lay off workers as labor demand for labor
Mhm.
is derived from what? From the final good and service.
Mhm.
So if there's less demand for the final good or service, just like if people are not buying shoes, then Foot Locker will not need any workers, right?
Yeah.
So they will lay off workers and that will cause unemployment. Therefore, therefore there will also be. And why is unemployment bad?
Um, because it reduces productivity.
Say it again, sorry.
It reduces productivity.
Uh,
Is productive in general.
why is unemployment bad for people?
They'll receive less goods and services. Less is available. Yeah.
Wait, say that one more time. It's just your microphone.
Um, wait, sorry, what did you ask?
No, say that again. Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Oh, because there's less like goods and services available.
Yeah, good. Um, and what about for the actual people who are getting unemployed?
Well, they won't have an income
Good. Why is that bad?
because they won't be able to afford like
Good.
necessities like
Yeah,
rent.
necessities, even nice things, so we can say that there's a fall in living standards, right? Because the
Okay.
ultimate goal of these four objectives, right? They're not just there for fashion. They're basically there to ensure that everyone has really nice living standards. If we're able to achieve all of these, it leads to better and better living standards in our
Mhm.
country, right? So we can go into detail about how unemployment is bad because those who are not working will have very low disposable incomes or no disposable incomes, and that means they will see a decline in living standard. So that's the ultimate reason why economic growth is good if it happens and bad if it doesn't happen, because it links on to one of the main things it links on to is actually unemployment, and unemployment is directly correlated to living standards.
Okay.
So you can use them whenever you draw a diagram. When you're trying to describe the impact of something in macro, you're often going to draw one of these diagrams, and then you're going to be able to say any of this stuff depending on the question.